Welcome to the tale of the undocumented world. Let's travel back to December 15, 1953, in the headquarters of Hill, Knowlton in New York City. The office doors were tightly shut as President Hill was presiding over a historic secret meeting. In attendance were leaders from major American tobacco companies, elite members of Hill Knowlton, and two important figures, Edward Bernays and C.C. Little. Bernays was known as the father of modern public relations, while Little, a former president of the University of Michigan, was one of the top geneticists and cancer experts of his time. This meeting, historically known as a frank statement to cigarette smokers, would later be more accurately named Thank You for Smoking. President Hill began by saying, "No one wants you to quit smoking. Smoking must remain fashionable." 50 years ago were popularized cigarettes, making them symbols of power and masculinity. 20 years ago, during the women's rights movement, Bernays turned cigarettes into emblems of female liberation. But now, doctors are declaring war on us, claiming that cigarettes cause lung cancer. Should we confront them head-on? No. Instead, we believe that a single scene in Hollywood can make young people fall in love with cigarettes. Once they take that first puff, they'll be hooked for life. The tobacco in their hands will control their happiness, peace, and well-being, and they will spend a fortune to beg for these pleasures day after day. If the doctors are wrong and cigarettes don't cause lung cancer, you'll have a customer for life. If they're right, lung cancer will quickly deplete their bodies and savings, leading to an early death. Capital returns, capital rolls forward, and society bears no burden. Doesn't this align with your interests? But there was one weird thing. The challenge is to divert attention away from the link between cigarettes and lung cancer. Doctors claim that the rising incidence of lung cancer is linked to the popularity of cigarettes, but this is just a hypothesis. We can also use scientific methods to hypothesize that air pollution or other factors are responsible. Dr. Little, our leading cancer expert, can help us find scientific loopholes, using science to counter science and confusion to obscure the issue. By turning the tobacco crisis into a scientific debate, we ensure that as long as the debate continues, your cigarettes will continue to sell. We need to create a scientific institution that appears authoritative. The Tobacco Institute will admit that there are many unknowns about tobacco while expanding public discourse, turning the crisis into advertising. President Hill's strategy proposal was met with a standing ovation from the tobacco executives. Today, we can see the minutes of that secret meeting, which clearly state: first, we should establish a research committee. Second, we should inform the public that while the link between tobacco and cancer is a medical concern, there is no conclusive scientific evidence. Third, our primary goal is to reassure the public. Fourth, the research committee will address questions such as why half the mice in a study died from smoke oil, but not from lung cancer, why male lung cancer rates are soaring despite higher female smoking rates, and what benefits smoking might offer. The committee will also investigate the smoking habits of world leaders and historical misattributions of diseases to tobacco. On January 1, 1954, the Tobacco Institute was founded. On January 5, a frank statement to cigarette smokers appeared in 448 newspapers, reaching over 43 million readers. By April, a booklet titled "The Scientific Perspective on the Controversy Over Tobacco" was sent to 176,800 doctors and scientists, 15,000 news outlets, and 114 major publishers and media executives. The booklet featured research from 36 top scientists questioning the link between smoking and health. Meanwhile, hundreds of professional tobacco lobbyists were dispatched across the country, armed with cash, to influence key figures and appear on television, using Hill Knowlton's stout strategy to undermine anti-smoking advocates. For example, in a talk show, a teenage lung cancer patient was brought on stage. A tobacco lobbyist countered by saying that if a customer dies, the tobacco company loses a customer, which is not beneficial. Only those who shout for a smoking ban truly want the teenager to die so they can secure more funding, but who knows how much of that funding actually goes toward banning smoking? This shifted the focus from the dangers of youth smoking to institutional interests, leaving the audience more concerned with the latter and forgetting the former. Now, let's go back to 1947 at Bellevue Hospital in New York, where the spark that ignited the tobacco war was lit. One day, a medical intern named Ernst Wynder was shocked when he saw lung cancer patients' lungs for the first time. Medical textbooks told him that lung cancer was rare, but during his internship, he noticed that it was becoming increasingly common. Wynder, being persistent, decided to investigate. He interviewed several lung cancer patients and found that they all had a history of smoking. He compared the rise in lung cancer incidence with the popularity of cigarettes and concluded that smoking might be the cause. Wynder shared his theory with his mentor, Dr. Graham, hoping for support. However, Dr. Graham, a heavy smoker, dismissed the idea, believing that tobacco was a beneficial herb. At the time, most doctors did not consider smoking harmful and even endorsed cigarette advertisements. Many doctors smoked Camel cigarettes, and Lucky Strike was promoted as low irritant. Over a third of American doctors smoked at least one pack a day, and 55% of adult males and 60% of adult females smoked. Despite the skepticism, Wynder conducted two groundbreaking studies. In 1948, he distributed questionnaires at Bellevue Hospital to gather data on smoking habits among lung cancer patients. By 1949, he had collected 200 responses, indicating that lung cancer was becoming more common. His preliminary findings caught media attention, and when journalists asked Dr. Graham about the study, he confidently suggested that stockings, which became popular around the same time as cigarettes, might be the real culprit. In 1950, Wynder collected 600 for more responses from across the country, confirming that most lung cancer patients were heavy smokers. Dr. Graham, now convinced, supported Wynder's next experiment. They designed a device to simulate smoking on collected tar condensates. These were applied to mice, with 112 mice receiving 40 mg of tar 3 times a week, while 40 for mice served as controls. After 42 days, the first cancerous lesion appeared in the treated group. By the 12th month, 58% of the treated mice had developed cancer. By the 16th month, only 8% of the treated mice were alive compared to 53% of the control group. This experiment, equivalent to a human smoking 3 packs a week for 30 to 35 years, convinced Dr. Graham to join forces with other chest surgeons and cancer experts to call for a smoking ban. Unfortunately, he died of lung cancer 4 years later. Tobacco had a long history of influence, from serving as collateral during the American Revolution to being a strategic commodity in both world wars. The revenue from tobacco sales was a formidable opponent for Wynder. Despite the scientific evidence, tobacco companies poured vast sums into society, increasing smoking rates. By 1960, the average American smoked 4,171 cigarettes per year, up from 3,122 in 1953. Proving that tobacco causes cancer required experiments on humans which ethical standards prohibited. Thus, the debate remained hypothetical, allowing the tobacco industry to use out strategies to maintain sales. In 1952, Philip Morris introduced the filtered cigarette, targeting the anxiety over harmful tar. They claimed that their microparticle filters designed by top scientists from Dow Chemical and DuPont made smoking safer. Other brands quickly followed suit, but the filters were often made of asbestos, later classified as a carcinogen. In 1964, the U.S. Surgeon General released a 150,000-word report based on 1,200 journals and 6,000 papers, concluding that smoking caused cancer. The report, featuring 12 million cancer cases, finally convinced the government to act. The Federal Cigarette Labeling and Advertising Act was passed, requiring all cigarette packs to carry a warning about health risks. However, the warning was later watered down to, "Smoking is dangerous to your health." By 1971, the last cigarette had aired on U.S. television. But it wasn't until 2012 that tobacco was officially classified as a carcinogen by the WHO. In the past 50 years, tobacco has killed up to half of its users, causing over 8 million deaths annually, including 7 million direct smokers and 1 million from secondhand smoke. In the 20th century, tobacco killed over 100 million people, and it is projected to kill over 1 billion in the 21st century. As of 2018, the smoking rate in the U.S. dropped to 16%, and consumption fell from 4,345 cigarettes per person to 1052. However, 1.3 billion people still smoke globally, with 80% living in developing countries, and China accounting for a quarter of the total. Every day, 80,000 teens under 18 try their first cigarette, and 12,000 become regular smokers with a success rate of quitting below 7.5%. Reflecting on that secret meeting, thank you for smoking. Perhaps there is a deeper conspiracy behind tobacco. After all, in our story, America is a genetic farm for extraterrestrials, and every crop that comes from here has the power to change the world. Thank you for listening to today's story. See you next video.